In 500 meters, take the exit out of your comfort zone. But you know that BuzzFeed does these videos that actually they send kittens and they interview the person. Yeah, so the person is sitting on the floor and they send puppies and kittens to play with them.
Hello, my dear. Okay. Hello, my name is Valeriya Izhyk. Welcome to The Middle Ground. It's our 10th episode today, and we urge you to subscribe to our LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube channels, as well as Spotify, to hype us a little bit up. We give a lot to the community we receive from with our project, and we would like to have a conversation with someone who is doing exactly the same. Coming from the Czech Republic, Andrea Bittnerová is a podcast junkie in Brussels, who is an emblematic example of the gift economy in the city. Like me, she is the only child in the family and coming from a mining region in the east of Czech Republic. Andrea will share how does it feel to overcome the fear that you might never leave a place you never felt you belonged to in the first place. Most of you know Andrea from her LinkedIn posting with helpful tips from Brussels and her newsletters Live in Brussels. But today, we're going to go beyond the avatar. Welcome, Andrea.
Hi, Valeriya. Thank you so much for having me.
So I'd like to start with the question we recently received under one of our posts on Instagram announcing an episode with Tom Moiler. And the comment was about referring to expats as migrants, because that's in essence what they are. Do you think that it's actually so important to have this distinction between the two? Shall we call all the expats migrants or the vice versa?
I don't personally have a strong opinion about this. If someone were to call me a migrant, or an economic migrant, I wouldn't be offended because that's what I am, who I am. I moved here for better job opportunities, for a higher standard of living. So it's not something that I would be insulted by. I think that the word expat, at least in my head, and it might be for other people as well, is someone working in the institutions because they, as we all know, don't pay taxes. So I feel like people want to distinguish between, the better off and the regular foreigners that moved here. But I'm learning that expats is actually universally used here for all the foreigners. There's even a Facebook group, Expats in Brussels, that has like over 50,000 followers, members right now. I don't think we should care that much, honestly, whether we are called an expat or a migrant. We shouldn't lean too much into mainstream media who's trying to weaponize this term as well because of the migration crisis in Europe, and just go about our lives. I think we have much bigger problems to care about than if we are called an expat or a migrant.
That's good, so I don't have to distinguish between the two in my next questions. But I remember you mentioned that story, how you were trying to register in Brussels Commune, and because you were born the year after which Czechoslovakia was peacefully split into Czech Republic and Slovakia, they kind of had an issue where to put you. And since you are representative of Central Eastern Europe, and I would say that since at least 2022, our region is getting more traction in media and we kind of reinvent the whole part of Europe. Do you feel like there is a wind of change about how Central and Eastern Europeans are treated here in Brussels?
Mm-hmm. So a pro tip first for your subscribers. If you are from Czechoslovakia, so if you were born in Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, or USSR, you have to say that at the commune so they're able to register you. Because otherwise, they will not know what is wrong, why they cannot register you. That's what happened to me. I kept saying, I'm from the Czech Republic, and then they realized, oh, but when you were born, it was still Czechoslovakia. So, pro tip. But I agree with you that sadly, because of the Russian full-scale invasion in Ukraine, people started noticing our region more, the neighboring countries that were offering help, and that we are not just the new member countries of the EU anymore, but we are here to act, to make, maybe decisions that not everyone agrees with, but to show that we really care about the region of Central and Eastern Europe.
And there are quite a few Czechs and Slovaks who became famous and very prominent since 2022. Would you say you have any role models or those who you are personally proud of among your fellow countrymen?
That's not an easy question for me to answer, because I don't know how many people know that the Czech Republic never had a female prime minister or a president, and there are very few female politicians that we could actually be looking up to. One of my role models that I actually got to meet this year was Dita Charanzová, who was vice president in the European Parliament. So that was a big deal, because it's not something that you're necessarily appointed to easily, but first you have to be elected as an MEP, and then you are appointed to this position. And she's a super nice person. I don't know if she's watching this, but she's a very, very nice person. And then our president is a big role model for me, Petr Pavel, because he's very human. He's doing all the mundane, natural stuff, like he's riding his motorcycle and he's going to music festivals, and he's just so normal and kind that he's definitely someone to aspire to, no matter what gender you are.
But coming back to your reason to move to Brussels, you are quite an outlier in that respect. You didn't do this for your partner, you didn't do this for the College of Europe or for the institution internship. Tell us your story. What made you move to Brussels?
I always wanted to live abroad, as long as I remember. But after university, I had an opportunity to have a full-time position after my graduation. So it's something I didn't feel like I could say no to, because it was a big opportunity. And then there were other opportunities that were keeping me home, but I still felt that something was missing, that I really, really just wanted to make this move, even if it was for a year or two, to say to myself, okay, I tried, maybe I failed, but I tried. I'm not going to regret this at the end of my life. So there was a moment when I was 27 where I felt I'm not growing anymore. I don't have kids. I don't have a partner. It's the best time to move here. It took me a couple of months to find a job from the Czech Republic, because I think for the recruiters, it was a bit strange that I suddenly wanted to move here. Looking at my CV, they didn't think I had maybe any network here, how I would deal with certain positions and tasks. But eventually on the 31st of December, I got a job offer. 2 weeks later, I moved here, and I'm saying 31st of December intentionally, because I actually made it my goal that by the end of 2019, I'm going to find a job in Brussels. And it was 31st of December. So if you believe in manifestation, it works. But anyway, I moved here 2 weeks later. And there were multiple reasons. I wanted to improve my French, but I didn't think it was good enough to work in France or in Switzerland at like a full level. I had already had friends here, so they were also helping me with my move, giving me tips, even checking my contract if my employer is not trying to rip me off or something. And it has a great geographical location. I love that I can be in London, in Paris, in Amsterdam so quickly, and on the train. I don't even have to fly. And as I mentioned already, the standard of living is really great. I knew that my friends could afford living here alone, which was very important to me, because I had been sharing my apartments all the time prior, and I really wanted to have that serenity and calm, and knowing that, I cannot think of the phrase right now, but you get the
return on investment.
We could say that. We could say that. Yeah.
Listening to your answer, I can imagine that it was very difficult to say no to some things that were coming your way and you thought you would be able to capitalize on them. But probably that's exactly the reason why so many people burn out in Brussels. Did you learn to say no?
I think you learn that with age, which is a good thing. So a lot of people fear going into their 30s. I did as well. I was complete Joey from Friends. When I was turning 30, that scene, he's like, God, why God? So yeah, I had a full-on crisis. But then when I turned 30 and got into my 30s, it's actually a really beautiful period because you don't care as much. You see things from a different perspective. And that includes, also what people think about you and saying no. I think I'm sometimes too good at saying no because people don't always like that. And I have to argue why I said no. But it's really necessary if you want to keep your peace. And as you said, not to burn out, because being a yes person, it might be great in your personal life if you want to experience like a lot of new things. I will say yes to this party. I will say yes to this trip. But at work, not only can it drain you, but over time, people might start taking advantage of that and abuse that situation. And that's what everyone should be really cautious about and just really stay on top. And if they need to say no, unfortunately, be ready with some arguments as well.
But of course, something that you couldn't say no to was your extra activity on LinkedIn. All the tips that you're given to the newcomers to Brussels and wannabe EU wannabes. Tell me what's the mission of your LinkedIn and newsletter project, and what would you say to those people who want to start their passion project or side project and they might somehow be constrained by what their employer will tell about that?
I started posting on LinkedIn because there's actually a friend of mine who had been posting there for some time. He was very successful and we come from the same volunteer student organization. So I thought, okay, if he can do it, then I can do it as well and bring a different perspective because I had a different background. And I felt for some time that I wanted to do more, that I had come, before working for a think tank, I had come from a civil society, NGO background, really working with people on the ground, youth, on non-formal education. And I felt I was missing that aspect of really being in touch with people, helping them, seeing impact. And that's why I started posting on LinkedIn. I had several ideas what I was going to post about at the beginning. And then it turned out something completely different. People started really resonating with me talking about Brussels, what is wrong with Brussels, what is great about Brussels. And a few months in, I decided, okay, I'm going to make it my whole brand and talk about Brussels through different lenses of how to get here, how to organize events here, because that's what I do professionally, and maybe some other tips that are relevant, to the current situation that I was in. So I really wanted to inspire people, but to be completely transparent, also build my personal brand. With the newsletter, it was different because when I was writing on LinkedIn, in 98% of cases, my posts were too long. So you have a 3,000 character limit, and almost every time I had to shorten it, and I felt like I had so much more to say still that I had this idea of starting a newsletter, because currently newsletters are also having a major boom, and I'm loving that because everyone's always like, oh, it's the short form. People don't have long attention spans. But when you think about it, podcasts, newsletters, YouTube videos, people actually really care about long form content. So I wanted to have the newsletter more as a fun, because LinkedIn, as we know, is still a lot about work. It's a professional social network. But with a newsletter, I could talk more about fun and free time And I'm always big on recommendations. So my friends know that if we go for brunch, they wait for my list and I say, okay, we can go to these places. And I personally like following accounts that give recommendations all the time. So I wanted like a one-stop shop for people that they get an email in their inbox and it tells them what activities are in town for the next 2 weeks, what restaurant they should go to, how to meet new friends, how to save money. And it's a really great playground for me because I can be more myself. It can be less polished than LinkedIn. And I think there's a lot that can be done with newsletters in Brussels. And your last question?
For those people who might love to start their passion project or some side project also reflected on LinkedIn, but they might be a bit frustrated by what their employers tell about that, how it will look in terms of their image that is already formed by their main occupation. What would you suggest to those people?
Not to be afraid and get over that cringe moment. A lot of times, even now, when I post something, I'm thinking this might be cringe. I'm not sure about this. And it's completely normal and natural because you're really putting yourself out there. You don't know who's going to see it. You don't know who's going to comment on it. But it's really a great practice of what we talked about, like not caring about what people think, as long as you're not hurting people or spreading misinformation, disinformation, I think that if employers are scared of their employees posting on LinkedIn, they're not understanding LinkedIn well and what it can do for their organization. In my case, for instance, I have my organization in my headline. So every time I post something, it goes back to the organization I work for, even though I don't necessarily talk about them in the post. Or I comment on posts that are relevant to my work. I already got many messages of people wanting to meet with us, wanting to work for us, coming to our events, applying for jobs. So it's actually only for the benefit of the organization.
Yeah, I think we can also relate to these recommendations a lot. We did cringe a lot with Viktorya when we were posting our first episodes and snippets. But I think that's the cost that you pay for creating something new, for filling the new niches, especially in the city like Brussels, where the corporate culture is so high protocoled that whenever you are stepping outside of that protocol, it always feels wrong. And I would love to encourage everyone who is listening or watching us to do make that first step. And I mean, there was the attention span in Brussels. I think everyone will forget about what you've done yesterday. So
that's also true.
But then I think it's easier for us who are not working in the European Commission or the Parliament, EEAS, and other EU institutions. Probably for those who are in, it's way, way more difficult. And then the question that pops up in everyone's mind, is there any stigma around being in or outside of the bubble? And who does it serve if people who want to actually go beyond and under cannot do that if they are part of the new institutions?
This whole discussion about the bubble, non-bubble, who's in it, what does it mean? I also have it sometimes in my LinkedIn comments. Are you talking about the bubble or are you talking about Brussels? I think it's been artificially created by the people in the Brussels bubble, mostly the institutions. There is so much entitlement in this city and especially in these high-level political or policy positions that very often I meet people who really think they're better than anyone else. But it depends, like you get to meet some very high level officials who are down to earth, who are very kind and great. And then sometimes people in even lower positions who think that, we cannot curse on this podcast, I think. So they're the thing, let's say. But for me, I To be honest, on LinkedIn, I mostly focus on the Brussels bubble because that's what I know, that's what I worked in, it's natural to me. But in my newsletter, on the other hand, it's really about Brussels, and actually getting people out of the bubble and thinking what great things they can do in Brussels, not to think about work when they read my newsletter.
In the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're in or out of the bubble. Lots of us deal with burnout sooner or later. You went through one recently as well. What would you recommend to those who listen to us and who watch us? How do you identify it, and what are the ways to pull out of it?
I can only speak about my personal experience, obviously. This is in no way to be a replacement of any professional help. I want to make that very clear to the listeners and viewers. For me, it was gradual. And what I've heard from other people, it also wasn't a sudden thing, but more gradual, that maybe you started being more tired. In my case, I had a back pain. I mean, I always have back pain, but I had more back pain than usual. And you see the effects on your work, that you're less focused, you maybe don't care as much anymore, you're becoming frustrated, and it just piles up. So in the end, it's usually a combination of things, and people can tell that they should take some time off. What I would recommend is really watch yourself, start noticing if something is changing, if your relationship to work is changing, to your colleagues, even to your friends. Seek professional help. There's definitely no shame in talking to a therapist or other mental health professional, and know that it's going to get better. That at the moment, it can seem like nothing's making sense, that nothing is ever going to be the same. You're at a loss. You feel that you may be the only person thinking that way about the situation, but you will get through it, and it gets better, and it will make you so much stronger because you will also recognize the limits that you have, and you will be extra careful not to surpass them again.
Thank you for being vulnerable with this very sensitive question. And it leads me to the question, how do you find your middle ground in Brussels?
I learned to really separate between work and my personal time, my free time. So I have a rule that before I go to the office, I don't open my mailbox. After I leave the office, I don't open my mailbox either. And despite me having Outlook and Microsoft Teams applications on my phone, the notifications are always off. So that, when I go on holiday, I don't accidentally forget about it. And then I start getting notifications. I think in Brussels, we have a problem that we let the job become our entire identity and let it consume us, and really think about it beyond the working hours and even at the weekend. But we're so much more than our work, than our job. So for me, I really, these were little things that helped me to get away from thinking about work and then really leaning into my hobbies, whether it's reading a book, listening to a good podcast like yours, watching on YouTube every week, for instance, going out with my friends, and just completely turning off. I would definitely recommend it to everyone.
Well, I know that you brought something that links the middle ground and something you cannot live without in the city.
So I brought magnesium because it helps me sleep every night, to turn off after work, as I was mentioning, especially if you go to this networking reception and you mingle with so many people and then you're socially exhausted. You need something to calm you down. So I brought this. It's actually from a brand, not an ad, but from a brand that's from my hometown, because the Czech Republic is weirdly really obsessed with dietary supplements right now. And we produce so many of them. So great for sleep, but also for cramps, for muscle cramps, for period cramps. Only can recommend it.
every respectable household should have magnesium. I think that's these memes when two tablets, 2 pills of magnesium are entering your stomach, and they're like, God, there's so much stuff to do here. Like, what shall I start with? I think that's
I don't know.
that's how our magnesium feels in our bodies after a long work day.
Yeah.
Andrea, we have this tradition asking a question to our next speaker from the previous one. And the one you got is, who is your favorite Belgian?
I think it's Angèle. I actually only discovered her thanks to Dua Lipa. And then the song, I know! And then I learned she was Belgian, which also is confusing because she lives in Paris, right? But yeah, I love music. I used to sing for most of my life. So that's someone that I think Belgians can really be proud of.
I'm sure that they're not proud that Angèle, as a Belgian, lives in Paris, but we leave this for the Belgians in the comments. And now I would like to ask you, what would be your question to our next speaker?
My question to the next speaker would be, what makes you fall in love with Brussels over and over again?
Now I would like to invite you to our rapid fire questions. It's the part where you can just spit it out. Nobody gonna cancel you.
Hopefully. You never know.
The biggest misconception about Brussels?
That it's a gray, ugly city only with institutional buildings.
Book that changed the way you think?
Good Vibes, Good Life by Vex King.
One word your friends would use to describe you?
Kind, I hope.
If you weren't in the EU bubble affairs, what would you do?
I would be a singer or an actor.
We would need to test your singing skills in the end, off record. Best investment you ever made, time or money?
I think it was investment into my mental health, whether it's through therapy, massages, or anything that makes me happy.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
You're not saving lives.
Favorite Brussels bar?
I really like La Machine in the city center. You know it?
No.
No. So it's opposite the Al Saint-Géry, the Saint-Géry Island, and it's this cyberpunk bar that has really nice cocktails.
Favorite podcast?
Call Her Daddy.
It's Vika's favorite podcast,
Really?
and we actually take lots of inspiration from there.
I imagine it's really good.
Yeah,
It's one of the few podcasts where I listen to every single episode, no matter who the guest is.
one way we're gonna be so self-confident that we're gonna sit in our pajamas here and do it, no makeup. I mean, speak for yourself, huh? And we do this differently, but we're not there yet. We're not done with our therapies. If Brussels was an animal, what kind of animal would it be?
If Brussels was an animal, it would be a monkey. Because it can be very eccentric and crazy and all over the place, but it can also be like passive aggressive and calm. Like, it can be anything. I think monkeys are a lot of things, and Brussels is a lot of things as well.
I think that's how we arrive to the end of this episode. Having also another monkey jumping around us, our cat Bruges. Your tattoo. I noticed that you have a tattoo. What does it mean?
So I have this tattoo of a lotus, but there's also a semicolon, which is a mental health symbol. So it's a reminder of being just conscious of one's mental health and the state that you're in. And the lotus is actually very, it's a symbol in Hinduism and Buddhism about rebirth, femininity as well. And I got it during a difficult period of my life, so it's a reminder to keep going.
Yeah, we're not saving lives, but we're definitely making lives of other people better. So let's continue doing this together.
Thank you.